Hello and welcome back once again to After the Credits. Again, still playing catch up on movies, so there will be more movie reviews coming out throughout the next few weeks. Today, I got around to seeing Now You See Me 2, the sequel to the only mildly received Magician movie from a couple years ago. What did I think of this movie? Well, I like the first one better, only because it was a little bit more easier to follow the story in that one, despite all the twists and turns that it had. This one, it tries to pull off the same kind of storytelling, but at the same time, it's just kind of all over the place. It's real hard to follow. Not revealing too many of the trick things that they're doing, obviously, but at the same time, not really explaining where they're going with it. The movie starts off with the Horsemen still in hiding. It's been, I think they said, about a year or so. The girl from the first one got tired of waiting for their next assignment, I guess, and ended up leaving the group. Which really doesn't make sense, other than they couldn't get the actress back to reprise her role. But to just write her out like that is kind of because, I mean, they were all excited about becoming horsemen in the first one. So for her to finally get this opportunity and then just walk away from it because they haven't had an assignment in a few months. So she gets tired of waiting, so she leaves. One of the characters, played by Jesse Eisenberg, who I guess him and her were dating by the end of the first one. It's been so long since I've seen it, I honestly don't remember. Since she left the group, she also left him, which kind of upset him, so he kind of went off to try to find the head of this organization, because it's not just Mark Ruffalo's character that's behind it all, even though that's kind of what they made it out to be in the end of the first one. He's actually part of this larger order called the Eye, which, again, I don't remember if they touched on in the first one or not. They might have. The Eye's not being very forthcoming with things, not letting them know what their next assignment's going to be. They're tired of being in hiding. They want to be center stage for something. Mark Ruffalo can't get them the answers. So Jesse Eisenberg's character, being pissed off that his girlfriend left him, starts going behind Mark Ruffalo's back and communicating with the members of the Eye himself. So finally they get called out of hiding. They're like, okay, we got our next assignment, this is what we're going to do. And it's to expose a head of a major organization, saying that, he's like embezzled funds or misdirected people and things like that. And so they basically kind of what they did in the first one, just this one's more of a short game than the long game that they had to play to set up the one in the first one. During the course of this exposure that is going on, they end up getting interrupted by someone revealing all their secrets, revealing one of the other guys, I guess, faked his death at the end of the first one. And they kind of expose that he's still alive. They expose Mark Ruffalo's character as being a double agent, playing the FBI and being a member of the Horsemen as well. So kind of misdirecting everyone there. For some reason, Mark Ruffalo's character has fallen quite a bit from where he was in the FBI. In the first one, he was kind of this team leader that was out to prove a point, who, in case you haven't seen the first one, spoilers, ended up being the one directing the Horsemen all along. Now he's kind of busted down a little bit. Like, no one really buys what he's saying about the Horsemen anymore. It's almost like they're kind of onto him, but they don't explain how they got onto him. And like one of the guys even says, when you live a double life, eventually one of your personalities trips over the other. And basically just kind of calls him out as being a member of the Horsemen with no real grounds for it at all. So this guy is interrupting them, outs Mark Ruffalo's character as well. So they call for an abort, and they are going to their escape tunnel, which is a chute off the roof of the building that they're supposed to slide down into, like a dumpster or whatever. So they slide down the chute, and they come out, and they're not in the warehouse where they thought they were going to be, or the dumpster or whatever they were going to be. They are in a Chinese restaurant. So they're like, okay, somehow we end up in a Chinese restaurant. So they exit the Chinese restaurant only to find out that they're actually in China. Okay. So through a course of actions, we find out how they ended up in China, and we meet the person who's now blackmailing them, which is Daniel Radcliffe. So he basically tells them, he's an aspiring magician himself. He's pretty good at tricks and everything. But he's more technological. He's kind of like, science is a real magic. And says that this organization stole something he created and is using it kind of against him. So he wants the Horsemen to use their skills, break in, steal it back from him, and then he'll be square with them and let him go. So at first they're a little hesitant to do it, and eventually they agree to do it just because we need an action scene in the middle of the movie, I guess. The second act action scene. So we go through all this, get this component that this company stole from him, and through the course of bringing it back to him, there's a double cross, which leads into a whole other convoluted story about revenge and things like that, and the way it plays out is kind of odd. Then it just kind of plays out the rest of the movie where it's trying to show you what it's doing, but you're not really making sense of anything. And it all leads up to the Horsemen making another grand appearance, which they plan for London on New Year's Eve at the stroke of midnight. They'll reveal their big magic trick. So everything's going and going and going, leading up to all that, and they get captured by the bad guys, and you're like, oh, they're not going to make their deadline, blah, blah, blah. Things play out to where everything's finally revealed. They reveal their tricks at the end, how we got from point A to point B throughout the story, and just the whole thing is like, let's make up the most convoluted story we can because we need another film, where I feel had they taken the time to flesh this out a little bit better, it probably could have been a better film. I'm not going to tell you how it ends. If you like the first one, oh, I can't really say that because I kind of enjoyed the first one, even though it had its problems. I still enjoyed it. This one, I just found it real hard to follow. So I can't even say if you like the first one, you might like this one, because I was just kind of like, what is even going on? What is it? What is the story here? Even when they explained it, I was like, what was the story? It was real confusing to me. And it's not even that I missed anything, because even when they were explaining everything at the end, I was like, yeah, okay, I get that. But why? Why did all that? Why was all that? It just, I don't know. It seems like they just tried to rush out another movie, and it just didn't have the heart that the first one had. Like I said, the first one had problems, but at least it had a little bit of heart to the story. This one just kind of, it tried to squeeze some heart in, but it just didn't capture it the same way that the first one did for me, I guess. So what would I give it as far as a star rating? I'm going to give it a 2.5. It's just kind of a basic film, another middle-of-the-road film. Everything's just kind of a middle-of-the-road lately. This one is a middle-of-the-road, but it almost seems like they just put something together that they didn't even really need to make because the first one kind of stood okay on its own. But they're like, well, we left it open for a sequel. The studio gave us money for the sequel, so let's just crap something out and hope it does good. And it just didn't have the same magic, for lack of a better term, as the first one did. So it gets a little bit knocked down from that, which is why I give it a 2.5. So that is it for this episode. Again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Links are in the description below. And until next time, we will see you after the credits.